The rain had ceased but left the cathedral steps glistening like polished obsidian, each stone reflecting the pale morning sky and the restless carriages assembled in proud procession. Within, beneath vaulted ceilings painted with saints and sorrow, the chandeliers trembled with 1,000 captive flames. Nobility gathered in silk and satin, their whispers floating upward like perfumed smoke. It was not the bride who first commanded their notice, nor the formidable groom whose name carried the authority of ancient bloodlines. It was the woman in dove gray, standing too near the altar for a servant and too plainly dressed for a lady. Miss Elara Whitcombe held a ledger in steady hands, though her pulse betrayed her composure. She had once entered such halls as a daughter of rank, her laughter welcomed and her family crest recognized. Now she entered by side doors, tasked with arranging roses and calming musicians. Her father's estates had fallen to debt and rumor, and society, ever hungry for spectacle, had devoured them without remorse. Thus Elara earned her livelihood in the orchestration of other women's happiness, stitching together ceremonies that would never be hers. "Miss Whitcombe," murmured a dowager, peering at her through a lorgnette, "one hopes the arrangements shall not mirror the collapse of her father's fortune." The surrounding ladies exchanged delicate smiles, their cruelty measured and elegant. Elara inclined her head as though she had heard nothing. Dignity was her last inheritance, and she guarded it with quiet ferocity. She directed footmen with precise gestures, adjusted ivory ribbons along the pews, and ensured that each arrangement of lilies stood immaculate. Every petal obeyed her. If only the human heart were so manageable. At the far end of the nave stood the man for whom this spectacle existed. Lord Alaric Ashbourne, known in both Parliament and province as the Alpha King. The title was half jest, half warning. His estates spanned counties. His influence bent lesser men to compliance. Tall and broad-shouldered, clad in austere black with a silver cravat pin bearing his ancestral crest, he seemed less a bridegroom than a sovereign attending his own coronation. His expression betrayed nothing, yet his gaze moved with unnerving deliberation across the assembly. When that gaze settled upon Elara, it lingered. The bride, Lady Cordelia Montrose, stood radiant beside her mother in a chamber beyond the nave, draped in ivory silk that shimmered like captured moonlight. She was beauty refined to calculation, every curl arranged with architectural precision. This marriage promised alliance between formidable houses. Affection, if present, was a secondary ornament. Cordelia's smile gleamed whenever she spoke of her future duchy, yet it faltered when informed that the wedding planner had once been acquainted with her intended. Acquainted? Cordelia had repeated, brows lifting. In what capacity? In youth, my lady, a companion supplied, relishing the revelation. Before, misfortune. Thus the whisper began its pilgrimage through the cathedral, that Miss Whitcombe had once ridden beside Lord Ashbourne during summer hunts, that they had exchanged books and glances, that ruin had separated what inclination had quietly formed. Each retelling sharpened the tale, until it reached Elara's own ears as a distortion of truth and longing. She forced her attention to the roses. White blooms for purity, crimson for loyalty. Her gloved fingers trembled only once, when a petal detached and fell like a drop of blood upon the marble floor. A footman approached, offering a small envelope sealed in dark wax. "For you, miss." Delivered without name. Elara frowned. She broke the seal and found within a single line written in a decisive hand, "You have never belonged in the shadows." A white rose accompanied the note, its stem freshly cut, its thorns removed with care. Heat rose unbidden to her cheeks. Cruelty often masqueraded as gallantry. She would not indulge in fantasies. Yet something in the script stirred memory, a firm pressure of ink, a confidence she had once admired. Across the nave, Lord Ashbourne dismissed a cluster of well-wishers with courteous brevity. His attention shifted again unerringly toward her. For an instant the surrounding murmur receded, as though the cathedral itself inhaled. His eyes, a storm-bound gray, held neither mockery nor indifference. They held recognition. Elara lowered her gaze first. She would not invite speculation, nor permit herself the weakness of hope. He had chosen Lady Cordelia, chosen security and alliance and the restoration of his political ambitions. Whatever tenderness had once hovered between them had dissolved beneath the weight of her family's disgrace. Men of his stature did not gamble their futures upon women fallen from favor. The organist tested a chord, its resonance rolled through the arches like distant thunder. Guests began to take their seats. Silks rustled, jewels flashed, and the scent of wax and lilies thickened the air. Elara moved with measured grace down the aisle, ensuring that each ribbon lay precisely as intended. She felt the scrutiny upon her back like the brush of cold steel. "Such composure," murmured one gentleman. "One would almost believe her indifferent." "Or desperate," replied another softly. "To remain so near what she cannot claim." Elara reached the chancel and adjusted the final arrangement beside the altar rail. As she straightened, she found Lord Ashbourne standing scarcely an arm's length away. No attendant lingered, no chaperone intervened. His presence altered the air, charged it with unspoken history. "Miss Whitcombe," he said, voice low yet resonant, each syllable deliberate. "You have transformed this cathedral." "It is my profession to create illusions of perfection, my lord," she replied evenly. "I trust the spectacle meets your expectation." His gaze did not waver. "Perfection," he answered, "is rarely illusion." For a heartbeat, silence bound them. In that fragile span lay years of restraint, regret, and choices unmade. Elara inclined her head, retreating before proximity betrayed her composure. She resumed her station near the side aisle, the anonymous rose concealed within her ledger like a forbidden confession. The doors at the rear of the cathedral opened, admitting a shaft of pale light and the first heralding notes of the bridal march. All rose as one. Lady Cordelia appeared, luminous and triumphant, her veil cascading like snowfall upon her shoulders. Lord Ashbourne stepped forward to await her. Yet even as the bride advanced, even as society leaned toward spectacle, his gaze shifted once more, not to the woman in ivory, but to the woman in gray who stood beyond the lilies, clutching a single white rose and the memory of words that refused to fade. And in that suspended instant, before vows could bind or pride could intervene, Elara understood with a tremor both terrifying and tender that the true ceremony had not yet begun. The bridal march swelled, reverent and triumphant, yet beneath its polished cadence trembled an undercurrent of unease that only the most observant could detect. Elara Whitcombe stood at her appointed place near the side aisle, her posture impeccable, her expression composed to the point of fragility. The white rose lay hidden within her ledger, its fragrance rising faintly, a quiet rebellion against the lilies ordained for another woman's glory. She told herself it meant nothing. She told herself that men of rank did not communicate sentiment through flowers on the morning of their arranged salvation. Lady Cordelia advanced like a vision wrought of ivory and ambition. Every measured step declared possession, of the aisle, of the guests, of the formidable man awaiting her at the altar. Lord Alaric Ashbourne inclined his head with impeccable courtesy as she reached his side. Yet even in that gesture there lingered restraint, as though his spirit observed the ceremony from a distance his body refused to cross. The officiant began the sacred recitation, his voice sonorous beneath the vaulted ceiling. Words of covenant and obedience echoed through stone and silk. Elara listened not to the vows but to the silence between them. She had arranged the choir, polished the candlesticks, negotiated the florist's temper and the caterer's pride. She had engineered perfection so seamless it should have erased her presence entirely. Yet she felt, with a certainty both humiliating and electric, that she remained at the center of something unnamed. When the first exchange of rings approached, a subtle disturbance rippled through the assembly. A footman hurried forward, pale and apologetic, bearing a velvet case not previously catalogued in Elara's meticulous inventory. She stiffened. No detail had escaped her supervision. No object entered this cathedral without her consent. The case was offered to Lord Ashbourne with deferential haste. "My lord, this arrived from Ashbourne Manor at dawn. It was instructed that it be placed directly in your hand." A murmur rose like wind across tall grass. Cordelia's smile tightened, though she did not turn her head. Lord Ashbourne accepted the case without comment, his gloved fingers steady. For an instant, his gaze flickered toward Elara, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps, or an apology. He opened the velvet lid. Within lay not the expected wedding band but a delicate antique locket fashioned of pale gold, its surface engraved with a motif of intertwined roses. Gasps fluttered along the pews. This was no ordinary trinket. It bore the unmistakable craftsmanship of a bygone generation, a relic of Ashbourne lineage. Cordelia's composure fractured at last. "Alaric," she whispered, her voice pitched low yet sharp as glass, "that is not the ring." "It is not," he agreed calmly. The officiant faltered, clearing his throat in confusion. The congregation leaned forward, hungry for explanation. Elara felt the cathedral walls contract around her lungs. Lord Ashbourne stepped down from the chancel platform, boots echoing against marble with a finality that silenced speculation. He did not look at Cordelia. He did not address the guests. He crossed the narrow distance that separated him from the woman in gray. "Miss Whitcombe," he said, his voice carrying with unforced authority, "you have labored without recognition. Permit me before these witnesses to acknowledge excellence." The words were impeccably proper, yet the act was perilous. He extended the locket toward her. Every eye burned upon her gloved hands. "My lord," she replied, struggling to anchor her voice in neutrality, "your gratitude is unnecessary. I have merely fulfilled my commission." "And I," he returned, "have fulfilled a promise long delayed." A tremor passed through her. She could not decipher his meaning, yet the locket's weight seemed already to press upon her palm. To refuse would be spectacle, to accept would be scandal. Cordelia descended from the altar, her veil whispering against stone, fury concealed beneath aristocratic poise. "This display is inappropriate," Cordelia declared with brittle grace. "The ceremony awaits its rightful course." Lord Ashbourne did not retreat. "Indeed," he said evenly, "but acknowledgement precedes union." He placed the locket into Elara's hand. The contact, though brief, ignited memory, summer evenings, shared confidences, the certainty of youth before ruin rewrote her name. She felt the congregation's judgment descend like a winter frost. With deliberate composure, she inclined her head. "I thank you, my lord," she said, though gratitude warred with alarm. He returned to the altar without haste. Cordelia followed, her smile restored by force of will. The officiant resumed, though his cadence now carried strain. The vows proceeded, but something fundamental had shifted. The union intended to appear inevitable now seemed contested by invisible currents. As the bride repeated her promises, Elara's fingers tightened around the locket. Compelled by a mixture of dread and longing, she pressed the clasp and opened it a fraction. Inside, protected beneath glass, rested a miniature portrait rendered in exquisite detail. It was her likeness. Not as she stood now, subdued and careful, but as she had once been, eyes bright with unguarded hope, hair unbound by restraint. The painting captured a moment from years past, one she recognized with startling clarity. A summer fete at Ashbourne Manor, when laughter had felt uncomplicated and futures unwritten. Her breath deserted her. This was no impulsive courtesy. It was preservation. The officiant's voice rose toward the climactic inquiry. "If any here present know cause why these two should not be joined?" The question hung suspended like a blade. Cordelia's gaze swept the assembly with imperious challenge. No one stirred. No one would dare. Elara closed the locket, its quiet click resounding louder in her ears than the organ's swell. She understood now that the rose, the note, the gift, none were accidents. They were declarations disguised as propriety. Yet declarations carried consequence, and consequence demanded courage she was uncertain she possessed. Lord Ashbourne's eyes found hers once more before he answered the officiant. In that glance lay defiance, regret, and something perilously akin to resolve. The cathedral waited. And Elara, standing amid lilies not meant for her, felt the fragile architecture of this wedding begin to fracture beneath the weight of a love neither buried nor forgiven. The question from the officiant lingered in the cathedral air like a suspended blade, its echo reverberating against stone and conscience alike. No voice rose in objection, yet silence itself felt charged with accusation. Elara Whitcombe stood immobile beside the aisle, the locket concealed within her trembling grasp, her pulse beating a confession she dared not utter. Lord Alaric Ashbourne's gaze did not waver from her face, though Lady Cordelia Montrose stood radiant at his side, awaiting the completion of vows that promised power more than affection. "I have no cause," Cordelia declared smoothly, reclaiming control of the moment with aristocratic composure. Her chin lifted, her smile returned like lacquer over fracture. All eyes turned to the groom. Lord Ashbourne's jaw tightened, not in uncertainty, but in resolve tempered by restraint. "Nor I," he answered at last, the words measured and deliberate. The congregation exhaled as one, relief mingled with disappointment at the absence of spectacle. Yet those nearest him observed the tension in his posture, the coiled stillness of a man wrestling an invisible storm. The ceremony concluded in flawless ritual. Rings were exchanged, simple gold bands selected months prior. Elara noted with professional detachment that the antique locket had not replaced the bride's token. It had been offered solely to her. The distinction was both clarifying and devastating. When the final benediction was pronounced, applause rippled through the nave like polite rain. Guests surged forward in a tide of congratulations. Silk brushed against silk, gloved hands clasped and released, laughter rang brittle and bright. Elara retreated to the periphery, directing footmen toward the awaiting carriages, ensuring that the procession to Ashbourne Manor would unfold without flaw. Yet whispers pursued her. "Did you see the gift?" "A portrait, I am certain of it." "Scandalous indulgence." She encouraged him. She always did. The murmurs sliced with greater precision than open insult. Elara maintained her composure, though the locket burned against her palm like a brand. She had not sought this attention. She had labored to avoid precisely such entanglement. To be the subject of speculation again was to reopen wounds she had stitched closed through discipline and humility. A carriage door slammed with emphatic force. Lady Cordelia emerged briefly from the cluster of admirers, her expression serene yet sharpened by private ire. She approached Elara with the measured glide of a queen inspecting a subordinate. "Miss Whitcombe," Cordelia said, her tone impeccably civil, "your arrangements have been memorable." Elara inclined her head. "I am gratified that the day has met your expectation, my lady." "Expectation," Cordelia repeated softly. "One does wonder which expectations have been met." Her gaze dropped pointedly to Elara's closed hand. "I trust you comprehend the delicacy of your position." "I do," Elara replied, though the truth trembled beneath the surface. Cordelia's smile did not reach her eyes. "Then exercise prudence. Sentiment is a luxury I do not permit to intrude upon my household." The carriage door opened again, and Lord Ashbourne stepped down to escort his bride within. For an instant, his eyes flickered between the two women, discerning tension without inquiry. Cordelia placed her hand upon his arm with possessive grace. "We depart," she announced. He nodded, yet before following her into the carriage, he addressed Elara directly. "You will accompany us to the manor, Miss Whitcombe? There remain matters requiring your supervision." It was a reasonable request. The wedding planner often oversaw the reception's final orchestration. Yet the command carried an undercurrent that unsettled them both. "As you wish, my lord," she answered. The procession commenced beneath a sky pale with reluctant sunlight. Carriages rolled along cobbled roads toward Ashbourne Manor, whose turrets pierced the horizon like sentinels guarding generations of ambition. Elara rode alone in a smaller conveyance behind the bridal carriage, her reflection wavering in the window glass. She opened the locket once more, studying the miniature portrait. She remembered the day it had been painted. Lord Ashbourne had insisted upon commissioning the likeness under the pretense of preserving a gathering of friends. She had protested, laughing, unaware that the portrait would one day become evidence of enduring devotion. In that captured gaze she saw trust unshadowed by ruin. The manor loomed grand and unyielding as the procession arrived. Servants lined the entrance, bowing as the newlyweds descended. Music drifted from the ballroom within, lively and insistent. Elara gathered her composure and followed at measured distance. The reception unfolded in lavish splendor. Chandeliers blazed above polished floors, tables groaned beneath crystal and silver. Toasts were offered to prosperity and alliance. Lord Ashbourne accepted congratulations with courteous gravity. Cordelia basked in admiration, her laughter ringing like chimes over water. Yet amid the spectacle, his attention strayed. During the first waltz, as bride and groom circled the ballroom, his gaze sought Elara among the orchestrators and musicians. Their eyes met briefly. The contact sent a tremor through her that no discipline could quell. She turned away, chastened by her own susceptibility. Later, as twilight deepened beyond the tall windows, she slipped into the adjoining conservatory to reclaim solitude. The air was fragrant with orange blossoms and damp earth. Candlelight glimmered through glass panes, casting fractured patterns across marble tiles. Footsteps followed. She did not turn immediately, she recognized the cadence. "Miss Whitcombe," Lord Ashbourne said quietly, the music from the ballroom softened by distance. "You avoid celebration." "I prefer to ensure its success, my lord," she replied, her gaze fixed upon the moonlit garden beyond the glass. He approached, stopping at a respectful yet intimate proximity. "You believe my actions today to be reckless." "I believe them to be ill-advised," she corrected gently. "Your bride deserves unambiguous devotion. And you deserve truth." The words struck with more force than any whisper of scandal. She turned at last, meeting his storm-gray eyes. Candlelight softened the severity of his features, revealing not dominance but conflict. "You have chosen your path," she said, striving for steadiness. "I would not trespass upon it." "Chosen?" he echoed. "I entered that cathedral believing duty demanded sacrifice. Yet duty without conviction is cowardice adorned." Her breath faltered. "Do not speak thus. You endanger more than reputation. Reputation is ash if it buries what is living," he replied, his voice lowering. I preserved that portrait because it reminded me of who I was before ambition instructed me otherwise. She clutched the locket reflexively. Memory is not mandate. No, he conceded, but it is proof. Silence enveloped them, thick with unsaid longing. Beyond the glass, wind stirred the hedges. Within, distant laughter persisted. He extended his hand, not touching her, merely offering proximity. I wronged you when your family fell, he said quietly. I withdrew, believing association would harm you further. Instead, I abandoned you to scorn. You owe me no penance, she answered, though pain edged her composure. We were young. I was weak. The admission stripped him of invulnerability. She had never heard him speak thus. The Alpha King, sovereign in every chamber, now stood as a man grappling with regret. You are married, she reminded him, the word weighted with finality. His gaze hardened, not in anger but in dawning recognition. Yes, he said slowly. Married. The music in the ballroom shifted to a triumphant crescendo, heralding the couple's return for the final dance. A servant entered the conservatory doorway, bowing. My lord, her ladyship requests your presence. Lord Ashbourne did not move at once. His eyes remained upon Elara, searching, questioning, perhaps pleading for a courage he had not yet summoned. You will remain at the manor this evening, he said at last, tone returning to measured authority. There are accounts to settle. As you command, she replied. He inclined his head and departed, leaving the scent of candle smoke and something unguarded in his wake. Elara remained motionless until the echo of music reclaimed dominance over her thoughts. She opened the locket again beneath the wavering light. The painted version of herself seemed to gaze back with unblemished certainty. Outside, clouds obscured the moon, and the manor's towers loomed in silhouette against the darkening sky. Within those walls, vows had been spoken. Yet in the quiet of the conservatory, something more perilous had awakened, a truth neither ceremony nor alliance could easily contain. And as the final notes of celebration rose in hollow triumph, Elara understood that the true conflict had only begun, for love unburied does not fade. It waits, patient and inexorable, for the moment duty falters that I end the ballroom. The final dance commenced with a sweep of music, a gliding motion of silk and courtesy that belied the fractures beneath. Lady Cordelia Montrose moved as though born to command such spaces, her smile flawless, her gaze sharp with possession. Lord Alaric Ashbourne held her hand in the waltz, guiding each step with disciplined grace, yet his attention strayed toward the periphery where Elara Whitcombe stood. She watched the couple rotate through the candlelit floor, her expression composed but not untouched. The locket rested against her palm, its metal warmed by her skin, a small secret against the vastness of the manor. She told herself it signified nothing, that memory was not permission, yet the portrait within the locket remained a stubborn testament to a time when possibilities had seemed infinite. Lord Ashbourne's gaze met hers across the dancers, brief and searing, a connection that neither could publicly acknowledge. Cordelia followed the direction of his attention, her smile thinning. You are distracted, she murmured, words for his ears alone. He answered with practiced politeness. Only by the success of the evening. The reply satisfied the room but not the woman beside him. Cordelia's fingers tightened minutely upon his, an assertion of claim. Elara averted her gaze, unwilling to witness intimacy that belonged to another. She moved toward the edge of the ballroom, seeking air and distance, yet the manor's grandeur surrounded her like an inescapable tide. Outside the tall windows, twilight deepened, painting the gardens in shades of indigo and silver. Lanterns bobbed along the pathways, their light trembling in the breeze. She considered retreating to the conservatory once more, a sanctuary of glass and foliage, but propriety held her in place. To disappear during the height of celebration would invite speculation, and she had long since learned that rumors could wound with greater precision than truth. Lord Ashbourne and his bride completed the dance, receiving applause as tradition demanded. Cordelia curtsied with regal poise and Alaric bowed, the picture of aristocratic unity. Yet when he straightened, his eyes sought Elara once more, a fleeting inquiry that unsettled her despite herself. She looked away, focusing on the arrangement of floral centerpieces as though their symmetry might grant order to her thoughts. A servant approached, offering a tray of refreshments. Miss Whitcombe, the accounts for tonight's reception require your review. The mundane request anchored her, a reminder of purpose. She accepted the ledger, nodding with professional courtesy. I shall attend to it. As she departed the ballroom, the weight of eyes followed her. Guests whispered, their voices too soft to discern but too pointed to ignore. The locket remained concealed, yet secrets have a manner of announcing themselves, and she sensed that the evening's events would not fade easily from memory. In a quiet corridor lined with portraits of Ashbourne ancestors, she paused. The painted visages observed her with stern, unblinking regard, as though measuring her worth against generations of expectation. One portrait in particular captured her attention, an earlier Lord Ashbourne, eyes strikingly similar to Alaric's, rendered with somber dignity. Beneath the frame a brass plaque read, "The name, a lineage that demanded excellence." She wondered whether such legacies allowed space for personal desire or whether duty consumed all possibility. Footsteps echoed behind her. Lord Ashbourne approached, his presence altering the atmosphere. He stopped at a respectful distance, hands clasped behind his back. "You perform your duties with remarkable skill," he said. The compliment was measured, neither overly familiar nor dismissive. Elara inclined her head. "It is my profession, my lord." He regarded the portrait beside them. "And yet profession does not define worth." The statement hung between them. She studied him, searching for pretense but finding instead a quiet sincerity that unsettled her. "Worth," she replied, "is often determined by those who hold power." His gaze hardened slightly. "Power can err." The admission surprised her. It was not the declaration of infallibility she might have expected from a man of his stature. Instead it hinted at self-awareness, at the burden of choices made and consequences borne. Silence stretched, filled only by distant music and the soft rustle of fabric. Elara tightened her grip on the ledger. "I shall return to my duties." She turned to leave, but his voice halted her. "Miss Whitcombe." She paused, waiting. "Thank you," he said. The simplicity of the words carried weight. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. As she resumed her path down the corridor, the locket pressed against her heart, a reminder of past and possibility. Behind her, the ballroom continued its revelry, yet something fundamental had shifted. The ceremony was complete, the alliance sealed, but beneath the surface of decorum lay unanswered questions. Lord Ashbourne's gaze, lingering and contemplative, suggested that the evening's significance extended beyond mere celebration. Elara understood that the path ahead would demand choices, and choices carried consequence. The cathedral's echoes had faded, replaced by the measured rhythms of manor life, yet the conflict introduced that day remained unresolved. Somewhere between duty and desire, between societal expectation and personal truth, lay the crucible in which character would be tested. She breathed deeply, steadying herself for what lay ahead. The future was uncertain, but it beckoned with the quiet promise of revelation, and as she disappeared into the dim corridor, the first hints of that revelation stirred. She carried the ledger like a shield, though no armor could fully guard against the vulnerabilities of the human heart. In the days to come, gossip would swirl, interpretations would multiply, and alliances would be scrutinized. Elara understood the machinery of society. She had witnessed its capacity for both elevation and destruction. Lord Ashbourne and Lady Cordelia represented the pinnacle of that machinery, their union a statement of power. Yet within the margins of ceremony existed human complexity, emotions unaccounted for by protocol. She paused at the corridor's end, glancing back once. Lord Ashbourne remained in conversation with guests, but his posture lacked the ease of true celebration. Cordelia smiled for the crowd, yet her eyes searched for reassurance. Elara recognized the fragility beneath the surface, the way appearances could conceal doubt. She turned away before observation became intrusion. The manor awaited her tasks, and she would fulfill them with precision. But in the quiet of her thoughts, the locket remained a constant presence, a symbol of possibilities both realized and denied. It represented memory but also the question of what might yet be. As she descended the stairs toward the service corridors, the sounds of celebration grew distant. Her footsteps echoed, steady and resolute, a testament to. The manor settled into a quieter rhythm as night deepened, the celebrations fading into pockets of subdued conversation and the occasional clink of crystal. Elara Whitcombe moved through the service corridors with practiced efficiency, ensuring that tables were cleared and accounts recorded. Her profession demanded invisibility, yet awareness of eyes lingered, whispers of guests who had witnessed the gift, the locket, the unspoken tension between her and Lord Ashbourne. She refused to acknowledge it. Duty required discipline, and discipline left no room for speculation. In the kitchen, servants stacked dishes and extinguished unused candles. The air carried the mingled scents of wine, roasted meat, and wax. Elara reviewed the ledger, noting expenditures with precise strokes of her pen. Numbers were honest in ways people often were not. They revealed truths without embellishment. The reception had exceeded expectations, and no logistical failures could be attributed to her oversight. By professional standards, the evening was a success. Yet success felt hollow. The locket remained in her pocket, its presence a quiet reminder of complexity. She had opened it only once since receiving it, glimpsing the miniature portrait that mirrored a version of herself untouched by ruin. That image unsettled her. It suggested continuity between past and present, a thread of identity she had long attempted to sever. Society had judged her family when fortunes collapsed. Friends had distanced themselves, opportunities had evaporated. She had rebuilt a life through labor, refusing to seek sympathy or favors. The locket threatened that equilibrium. A servant approached, hesitating. "Miss Whitcombe, my lady requests your presence in the drawing room." Elara glanced up. "Lady Cordelia?" "Yes, miss." The request was unusual at this hour. Formalities were typically reserved for mornings or scheduled consultations. Still, refusal was not an option. She closed the ledger and followed the servant through dimly lit passages until they reached the drawing room, where candlelight flickered against rich upholstery and portraits of Ashbourne ancestors gazed down with stern detachment. Lady Cordelia Montrose awaited her, seated near the fireplace. She held a glass of wine but did not drink. Her posture was poised, yet something in her expression betrayed fatigue, an imperfection quickly masked as Elara entered. "Miss Whitcombe," Cordelia said, motioning for her to approach. "Thank you for coming." Elara curtsied. "You required my presence, my lady?" "Yes." Cordelia studied her for a moment as though weighing words. "I wish to speak privately." The admission heightened Elara's caution. Private conversations with the bride of Lord Ashbourne were rare and often delicate. She remained standing, hands clasped. "I am at your service." Cordelia smiled faintly, though it lacked warmth. "You performed admirably today. The arrangements were flawless." "Thank you." A silence followed, neither hostile nor comfortable. Cordelia swirled the wine in her glass, watching the liquid catch candlelight. "It must be difficult," she continued, "to witness ceremonies such as this." Elara maintained composure. "It is my profession." "Of course." Cordelia glanced up. "Still, I imagine there are moments of reflection." The statement pierced with unexpected precision. Elara chose her response carefully. "Reflection is useful. It ensures improvement." Cordelia's smile sharpened slightly. "Practical. Admirable." Elara sensed subtext but refused to engage in speculation. "Is there something specific you wish to discuss?" The bride exhaled, setting the glass aside. "I will speak plainly. The gift from my husband, the locket, was unexpected." Elara's heartbeat quickened. "It was a personal gesture, my lady? I cannot speak to its meaning." "No," Cordelia's gaze hardened. "You cannot." The words hung between them, neither accusation nor absolution. Elara met her stare without flinching. "If it caused discomfort, I regret it." "Discomfort is not the issue." Cordelia rose, moving toward the fireplace. Flames cast shifting shadows across her features. "Perception is." Elara understood. Society thrived on interpretation. A gift could become scandal, a glance could become rumor. The locket, innocent in intent, had been transformed by circumstance. She had already sensed the whispers among guests. "I have no desire to intrude upon your marriage," she said quietly. Cordelia turned, expression unreadable. "Desire is not always relevant." The statement startled Elara. "I beg your pardon?" Cordelia approached, stopping a respectful distance away. Her voice lowered. "My husband is a man of influence. He inspires admiration, sometimes more than admiration. I'm not naive. I understand history exists." Elara's composure faltered for the briefest moment. "History?" "Yes." Cordelia studied her. "Yours and his." The admission stripped pretense. Elara felt the room contract, the air thick with implications she had spent years avoiding. She considered denying it, but falsehood would only invite further scrutiny. "We were acquainted in youth," she said. "Circumstances changed." Cordelia's expression softened, though not with sympathy. "Circumstances always change. What matters is loyalty." Elara straightened. "I am loyal to my duties." "Duties?" Cordelia repeated. "Not to individuals." The distinction was deliberate. Elara recognized the challenge, an assertion of boundaries, a reminder of hierarchy. She accepted it without protest. "I serve where required." Cordelia nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good. Silence returned, heavier now. The fireplace crackled, casting warmth that contrasted with the tension between them. Elara waited, uncertain whether the conversation had concluded. Cordelia spoke again. Alaric is a complicated man. He carries burdens few understand. Elara considered the words. She had witnessed glimpses of that complexity, the lingering gaze, the gift, the quiet admission in the conservatory. He was neither tyrant nor saint, but a man shaped by expectation and responsibility. I do not presume to understand him, she replied. No, Cordelia agreed. You should not. The finality of the statement stung, though Elara concealed reaction. She inclined her head. Is there anything further, my lady? Cordelia regarded her for a long moment. When she spoke, her tone softened. I do not wish for misunderstanding. Today was significant. I will not tolerate distractions. The implication was clear. Elara met her gaze. There will be none. Excellent. The conversation ended as swiftly as it had begun. Elara curtsied and withdrew, leaving the drawing room behind. In the corridor, she exhaled slowly, steadying herself. The encounter had been polite, yet its subtext resonated. She was a professional, an orchestrator of events, not a participant in the emotional complexities of the household. And yet complexity persisted. As she returned to the service quarters, the locket weighed against her heart. Cordelia's words echoed, loyalty, history, perception. They were concepts she understood, but their application here remained uncertain. Lord Ashbourne's gesture had been witnessed. Interpretation would follow. Whether it signified sentiment or courtesy mattered less than the reactions it inspired. Elara entered a quiet storage room, closing the door behind her. Shelves lined the walls, holding linens and unused decorations. She retrieved the locket, studying it once more. The portrait within stared back, an image of youthful hope that felt distant, almost fictional. She considered returning it, yet something prevented her. It was not attachment, nor desire to provoke. It was recognition of truth. The past existed, and attempts to erase it had shaped who she had become. The locket symbolized that reality. She closed it gently and placed it in her pocket. Outside, the manor remained awake with subtle sounds, footsteps, distant conversation, the rustle of servants attending late tasks. Life continued. Obligations remained. Elara breathed deeply, preparing to resume her duties. But as she reached for the door, she hesitated. A faint knock sounded from the other side. Her hand stilled. The timing was too deliberate, the location too private. She opened the door cautiously. Lord Ashbourne stood in the corridor. For a moment neither spoke. Candlelight illuminated his features, revealing weariness beneath composure. His gaze met hers, steady but conflicted. Miss Whitcombe, he said. My lord. He hesitated, then continued. I wish to thank you personally for your efforts today. The words were courteous, yet their timing suggested deeper purpose. Elara inclined her head. It was my duty. Yes. He studied her. And you performed it exceptionally. The compliment unsettled her. She maintained professional distance. I am pleased to have served. Silence followed, charged with unspoken questions. Finally he spoke again. The locket was intended as gratitude. Nothing more. She nodded. I understand. His expression softened. I hope it did not cause difficulty. It was unexpected. She chose the word carefully. He regarded her for a long moment. Life is often unexpected. The statement carried weight. Elara met his gaze, searching for clarity but finding only complexity. He extended his hand, not to touch her, but in quiet acknowledgement. Good evening, Miss Whitcombe. She hesitated, then accepted the courtesy. Good evening, my lord. He departed without further word. Elara remained in the corridor, watching his retreating figure until it vanished. The encounter had been brief, yet its implications lingered. Loyalty, history, perception. Cordelia's warnings returned. The household contained fragile balances, and she occupied a precarious position within them. She retrieved the ledger from her pocket and resumed her duties. But as she worked, the locket's presence reminded her that some questions could not be answered by numbers alone. They required courage, understanding, and the willingness to confront truths long avoided. The path ahead remained uncertain. And in that uncertainty lay the beginning of change.